Hey there, drowsy historian here. Tonight you're not a noble or a gladiator. You're not some marble-jawed hero standing tall against fate. You're just another sunburned resident of Pompeii, sweaty, sore, vaguely broke, and completely unprepared for what's coming. But by the end of the day, your lungs will be full of ash, your skin will have started to cook from the inside out, and your final moments will be immortalised as a grim little statue no one asked for. So before the ground starts shaking and the sky turns into something that shouldn't exist, leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love hearing who's tuning in from around the world, and if you'd like early access to more slow, miserable descents into historical catastrophe, plus perks like ad-free audio of these episodes, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. Now lie back and get comfortable. Let's begin. You wake up on your back, mouth dry, tongue glued to the roof like a failed plaster patch. Your head throbs, but not with the sharp clarity of a proper hangover. It's more of a dull, oozing ache, the kind that might be dehydration, or heat stroke, or simply your body giving up. The air is already warm and wet, clinging to your skin in a film of grime that never really comes off, no matter how many times you splash water on your face. Not that you have. The basin near your bed smells like boiled eggs and rotten copper, the local water laced with sulphur and optimism. You sit up slowly, joints crackling like broken roof tiles. The mat beneath you is stuffed with straw that hasn't been dry since the last election. Your little bedroom is lit by the kind of sickly morning light that filters through unwashed shutters, orange, grey, vaguely resentful. Somewhere outside, a donkey brays in protest, or maybe in hunger, or maybe it's just learned to mimic its owner. You've stopped trying to tell the difference between the animals and the people here. The distinction isn't as firm as philosophers like to claim. The room stinks of your own sweat, your partner's perfume, cheap, floral, aggressive, and the half-eaten bread you forgot to throw out. You pick it up now and examine it. Mostly mould, you take a bite anyway. The crunch isn't bread, it's the crust of exposure. It's fine, it probably won't kill you before the mountain does. Outside, Pompeii groans awake like a drunk with unfinished business. Voices rise in the alley, merchants setting up their stalls, neighbours arguing about goats, someone hawking something that sounds medicinal and almost certainly isn't. The city is alive in the way dying things often are, loud, erratic, pretending not to notice the rot. You hear carts rolling over stones, the whip crack of a too enthusiastic delivery boy, and somewhere, always somewhere, the steady hiss of steam rising from a bathhouse furnace. Everything is damp, everything is tired, including you. You step into your sandals and instantly regret it. Something's living in the left one, and it's faster than you. You slap the leather against the doorway and mutter a curse that no god is listening to. The gods, after all, are busy, or bored, or already halfway gone. You used to make offerings once. Now you just mutter, spit, and hope. You shuffle into the courtyard of your small sun-baked villa, which is a generous word for what is essentially a box with dreams of architecture. The mosaic tiles are chipped, the fig tree is dying, and the fountain hasn't worked in weeks. A neighbour once told you the water system is miraculous, a gift of Roman engineering. You'd believe him more if your drains didn't belch like drunks. Every time someone on your street flushed their hopes, you pass the atrium and spot the family shrine, the lararium, where a soot-smudged statuette of a household god stares blankly at your indifference. You give it a nod, because it feels worse not to, and pour a splash of watered-down wine into the offering dish. You don't even say anything. You don't have to. The gesture says it all. Don't make today worse. Breakfast is a few olives, some cheese that tastes like it's fighting back, and a cup of thin wine that pretends to be a digestive aid. It's not good, but it's food. The kind of meal that reminds you how close most Romans live to the edge, even when the streets sparkle with marble facades and painted frescoes. Behind every fine wall is someone coughing blood, hiding debt, or selling the same lie in a different jar. You're just one of many, neither rich enough to flee nor poor enough to be invisible. You live in that sweet, hopeless middle ground, visible enough to be taxed, forgettable enough to die without fanfare. As you eat, you hear someone next door trying to wake up their son for school. The child is screaming about a dream he had. The mountain was on fire, he says. Everyone was burning. The mother hushes him, fast and hard. Dreams aren't polite conversation, not anymore. People are already on edge, even if they don't admit it. The last few tremors were just the earth settling, according to local officials. Just like the smell is just the natural scent of prosperity, and the lack of rain is just the season. It's always just something, until it isn't. You pull on your tunic, still slightly damp from yesterday's sweat, and try to look like someone who has a plan for the day. You don't. Your job is part trade, part scam, part favour owed to a man you never liked. You sell olive oil that's been watered down, wine that's been salted, and promises that have already expired. It's honest work, in the Pompeian sense. Stepping outside, you're hit with the full bouquet of the city. Sulphur, sewage, fish, and the faint iron tang of something dead and long ignored. The sky is cloudless but pale, like a body that's bled out. The streets are already crowded. Bakers hawk their loaves, slaves sweep the dust into fresh corners, and prostitutes lean from their windows with the casual air of people who know the empire's collapse won't change their routine. You walk past the forum where a politician is giving the same speech he gave last week and the week before. He gestures dramatically toward the mountain, calling it a symbol of strength. You don't stop to listen. You've heard it all before. Pride, prosperity, public works. If you had a denarius for every time someone called Pompeii eternal, you could afford a place in Herculaneum. And even that wouldn't save you. You're sweating now. The heat is rising fast and the air is thick in a way that makes your ribs ache when you inhale too sharply. Somewhere a dog starts barking, frantic, high-pitched, panicked. You pause just long enough to wonder what it's barking at, then keep walking. You've got errands, a delivery, a bribe to pay, a favour to collect. You've got a whole list of things to do before the sky falls in. You just don't know that this is the last normal morning you'll ever have. And even if you did, what would you do differently? Probably nothing. That's the Roman way. It's mid-morning when you first notice something feels off. Not wrong exactly, just skewed, tilted, like reality's been nudged a few degrees sideways while you weren't looking. The light filtering into the streets has gone odd somehow. Not darker, not brighter, just filtered, dimmed and yellowed as if the sun has passed through a layer of old piss before reaching your skin. It casts long slanted shadows where there shouldn't be any and makes polished marble look jaundiced. You blink and squint and try to blame it on last night's wine. But no. Even sober people are shading their eyes and muttering. The birds are gone. You don't notice at first. Why would you? It's not something you usually pay attention to. The little brown things chirping and flitting about, stealing crumbs and pooping on laundry lines. But their absence is loud in its own way. There's no fluttering above the rooftops, no sudden bursts of motion in the fig trees. The usual background chirping, the scratchy Pompeian equivalent of a morning playlist, has vanished. Silence never meant serenity here. It meant something had fled, and you just hadn't figured out why yet. Meanwhile, the dogs won't shut up. One starts barking near the fish market, a thin, hoarse yapping, more panic than aggression. And another joins in half a block away, then another, until the whole quarter is vibrating with frantic canine hysteria. They bark at walls, at shutters, at empty corners. You hear a merchant shout and throw a boot at a mutt that's howling at a temple door. The dog doesn't flinch, doesn't even blink, just keeps staring at the mountain and growling with the low, hopeless fury of something that knows what's coming but doesn't have the words to say so. You assume it's a Roman thing, A festival maybe, or some obscure religious practice involving silence and barking. There are dozens of cults operating in Pompeii, and most of them are indistinguishable from public theatre or private madness. Last week someone sacrificed a chicken for better plumbing. The week before that, a senator's wife paid a priestess to bless her house against mildew. You learned a long time ago not to question any behaviour that didn't involve knives or fire. Still, you glance toward Vesuvius. It's just habit. A big, brooding presence at the edge of the city. Taller than it looks, closer than you'd like, and quiet for longer than feels natural. You don't think of it as a threat. No one really does. It's a feature, a backdrop, the kind of thing you put on a mosaic to impress guests from inland. It hasn't done anything in centuries, which by Roman logic makes it safe forever. You expect to see it looming in its usual grey-blue fuzz, with a light mist around the top. Instead, you see a cloud. At least, that's what your brain tries to call it at first. A towering column of white, rising from the mountain's peak, bloating upward like boiling milk. It stretches far too high, far too fast, tapering into the upper sky in a way that clouds simply don't. You stop walking, so do others. There's a communal pause, a mass narrowing of eyes, a quiet that isn't true silence, but the noise of too many people pretending they aren't alarmed. It's a storm, someone says near you too quickly. From the sea. Someone else mutters that it's snow in August. Another voice insists it's steam. Another suggests it's the gods showing their glory. One man, a former soldier with half an ear and double the opinions, says confidently that it's a military signal. Probably a drill. We'd have heard if it was serious, he adds. You look at the column again. It's bigger now, thicker. It doesn't drift the way smoke does. It climbs, and it brings with it the vague smell of burnt stone and salt. The marketplace doesn't empty. Not yet. Romans are stubborn. Stubbornness is practically the only civic virtue left, and it's applied liberally to both optimism and denial. So business carries on, sort of. A fruit seller raises his voice, shouting about peaches that look increasingly like bruised elbows. A cloth vendor loudly offers discounts no one asks for. Someone plays a reed pipe in the forum, badly, but with admirable determination. It all feels strained, as if people think that if they can just act normal enough, the sky will agree to go back to being the right colour. You hear a child crying somewhere behind you, then another one, then silence again, the heavy kind, the kind that settles on your shoulders like wet laundry. The cloud now has a shape. You didn't realise clouds could have shapes like that. It looks like a pine tree made of boiling dust, wide at the top, narrow in the middle, thick at the base, rising with an urgency that nothing natural should have. The top is flattening out, pressing against the stratosphere like a blister. The sun is beginning to fade behind it, not setting, just struggling. Someone starts praying, not loudly, just a soft chant, more breath than voice. You feel a flicker of embarrassment on their behalf, then realise your own hand is twitching toward your neck, where your amulet used to hang before you sold it to pay off a gambling debt. You don't believe in signs. You don't believe in much, really. But something in your chest has started to tighten, slow and cold, like a wineskin left out in the winter air. You cough and taste dust, not the usual street dust, finer, grittier, like powdered bone. A man runs past you, then another, then a whole group. Not a crowd, not yet, but fast enough that others start turning their heads. You do the Roman thing and pretend not to care, but your legs are moving now, following, drifting toward the edge of the square, where a cluster of people have gathered. They're pointing upward. No one is talking now, just watching. Then without warning there's a sound, not a boom, not thunder. It's worse. A low vibrating crack, like the ground itself just tore a seam open and decided to breathe through it. You feel it in your chest, in your teeth, in your groin. The sky flickers, something shifts, and now people start running. You don't. Not yet. because your brain, beautifully Roman and tragically human, is still filing this away under concerning but temporary. You look up one more time at the knock cloud climbing from the mountain, now rimmed with lightning and raining, something you can't quite identify. It's not a cloud, and it's not going away. There's a moment, just after the first crack of the mountain, but before the ash starts falling, when the entire city seems to collectively decide, this isn't happening. Or if it is, it's probably someone else's fault. The priests call it a test. The augurs say they saw it in the entrails. The merchants call it a disruption. And your neighbours? They call it interesting. The city isn't panicking. Not yet. It's too proud for that. Instead, people start arguing, loudly, passionately, with the confidence of people who'd rather be loud than correct. Across the courtyard, an old man says it's the Jews again. He never liked them, says they don't pay taxes, or maybe they do, but in the wrong spirit. Someone counters that it's the Christians, those strange whispering ones who refuse to honour the gods and bury their dead like they're planning a return. A woman near the fountain insists it's punishment from Venus because her daughter slept with a gladiator and no one sacrificed a dove afterward. Another insists it's just weather. It's happened before, she lies, to no one in particular. You don't say anything, not out loud, but your mind spins the wheel of blame. Politicians, foreign traders, that idiot who sold you vinegar last week instead of real wine. You cycle through everyone you've ever disliked, assigning each of them a share of the apocalypse. The one thing you don't blame is the mountain, because that would mean accepting that this isn't going away. And if there's one thing Pompeians are bad at, it's accepting the obvious. So you go to the baths. It's ridiculous, but not uncommon. The bathhouses stay open, of course they do. Romans bathe as ritual, as performance, as distraction, as habit. A little ash in the air isn't going to ruin that. So you head to the thermae, cloth wrapped over your nose more for fashion than function, trying not to think about the column of smoke still growing in the sky. You arrive to find the place half full, which means the city isn't scared yet. Some people are even smiling. There's a joke about hotter than usual in the caldarium. Someone coughs up something suspicious and laughs it off. You laugh with them. It's either that or scream. The water is warm, tinged slightly brown, and the steam smells faintly of minerals and mildew. You settle into it like a frog in a pot, telling yourself this is fine. That everything is fine. A man next to you says his cousin heard from a friend that the eruption, no one's calling it that yet, but the word floats there anyway, is just a venting. Natural pressure release, he says with the authority of someone who once slept with a minor geographer. You nod along. You don't want to be the one to disagree. The people who disagree are the ones who run, and the ones who run are the ones who admit it's real. After the bath, you buy a cup of wine. It's lukewarm and faintly metallic, poured from a jug that's been sitting in the sun too long. The vendor smiles too widely and mentions a sale, 2 for 1 if the city lasts through dinner. You laugh because that's the game. Pretend, smile, pretend harder. You sip slowly. The wine doesn't settle right. Something acidic churns in your stomach. It could be the drink, or the bath water, or the creeping awareness that you're still tasting dust in your teeth, even after rinsing 3 times. You wander toward the forum like everyone else. No one says they're doing it, but there's a magnetic pull to the heart of the city, to the place where decisions are made, or at least shouted. There's a crowd gathering beneath the statue of the emperor, who watches with his usual expression of stone indifference. A speaker, some magistrate's nephew, is yelling about civic duty and the importance of calm. He says the eruption is localized, that the wind is blowing the right way, that this is precisely the kind of minor disturbance Rome is famous for surviving. Someone cheers. Someone else shouts, "Hail Vesuvius," as a joke. It gets a laugh, but the laughter sounds a little too sharp, a little too fast. like a group of people trying to speak louder than the part of their brain that's screaming. The ash hasn't started falling yet, not properly. There's just enough in the air to turn your snot grey and leave a film on exposed skin. You keep wiping it off, only for more to appear a few seconds later. It's like sand but finer, more persistent. It gets under your fingernails, into your shoes, into the cracks of your lips. You taste it with every breath, but you tell yourself it's nothing, that it's like desert wind, like a summer storm, like something temporary. You try to find gossip, the old kind, the petty, familiar sort that gives the illusion of control. Who's sleeping with whom? Who bribed which official? Who got caught watering down garum with fish water? It helps, for a little while anyway. You talk to a friend about a loan you probably won't repay, and he talks to you about a debt he probably won't collect. Someone else joins in with a story about a girl who saw a glowing face in her mirror that morning. You all agree she's just dramatic. You keep your hands busy. That's the trick. Fiddle with your belt, scratch at invisible itches, rearrange your money pouch, anything to give your fingers a task, because idle hands start pointing toward the mountain. And once you start pointing, you have to admit what you see. You don't go home. Not yet. You hover near the forum, then drift toward the edge of the market, then circle back toward the basts. You're doing loops now, a kind of denial pilgrimage, as if movement equals safety, as if not standing still makes you harder to catch, as if death prefers the sedentary. At some point you pass a woman kneeling beside a small altar, her forehead pressed to the stone. She's whispering something, not a prayer exactly, but close enough. You look away. It feels impolite, like intruding on someone undressing. A few paces later, you see someone else placing a coin in the mouth of a dead sparrow, like that's going to bribe anything but the local ants. The sky gets darker, not evening dark, wrong dark, as if someone has smeared charcoal over the sun. You tell yourself it's cloud cover, that it'll pass. You've been telling yourself that since morning. You'll keep telling yourself that into the night, if night even comes, because the truth is simple. You can't accept what's happening because accepting it means doing something. Leaving, running, screaming. And you're not ready for that. Not yet, maybe not ever. You're Roman, you don't panic, you endure. It starts like a mistake, a bit of grit in your eye, a tickle at the back of your throat, the kind of thing you'd normally curse the wind for, or blame on a dirty street corner. At first, you don't even realise it's ash, it's just dust, light, pale grey, floating, settling on your sleeve like flour sifted through the sky. You brush it off and keep walking. No one reacts, not really. You all keep pretending it's fine, because it's easier to live in pretense than to admit that the world has started dissolving from the top down. But then it thickens. It's not just falling now, it's snowing. Grey flakes, broad and soft at first, landing on shoulders and rooftops and market stalls. They don't melt, they cling. They pile. A layer builds up on the statue of Jupiter in the Forum until it looks like he's aged 1,000 years. In an hour, children start grabbing handfuls of it and throwing it at each other, laughing until the coughing starts. One of them inhales too sharply and doubles over, eyes watering, face streaked with soot. The laughter stops. You hear someone mutter about going home, but they don't move. No one does. You pull your tunic over your nose. Others tie cloth around their mouths. Scarves, shawls, the hem of a toga if it comes to that. It helps for about 5 seconds. Then the ash seeps through. It always does. It's too fine, too dry, too eager to find its way into your body. You taste it in your mouth and feel it against your gums. You try not to breathe too deeply, but your lungs don't care. They wheeze and suck in the air, because that's what they're built to do, no matter how bad the air gets. The streets become a kind of theatre, a stage where everyone pretends they still have a script to follow. Shopkeepers try to cover their goods, but the fabric gets soaked in ash and collapses under the weight, A fishmonger shouts about fresh catch while his ware's crossed over in grey sludge. Someone tries sweeping, as if this is just another dusty morning. But the ash comes faster than it can be moved. For every handful tossed aside, another 10 fall. It's like bailing water from a sinking boat using a spoon. You try to head home. You tell yourself that will help, that inside you'll be safer, but you can't see clearly anymore. The air is thick, not quite opaque, but close. Visibility shrinks to arm's length. You can barely make out the outlines of people until they're right next to you. Ash-coated shadows, blinking and gasping like beached fish. Someone bumps into you and doesn't even stop to apologise. You don't either. There's no point. The ash gets in your ears, in your hair. It crusts in the corner of your eyes, mixes with sweat, and trickles down your face in black streaks. You taste blood when you cough. It scratches your throat on the way out, dry and hot and jagged. A woman nearby is retching into the street, spitting up black foam. A man is kneeling, not in prayer, but because he can't catch his breath. The gods remain silent. The mountain keeps shouting. You reach your street, or what's left of it. The ground's changed colour. What used to be stone is now a thick, shifting carpet of ash. You slip twice trying to climb the steps into your home. The ash isn't just falling now, it's piling, inches deep, then more. It clogs the gutters. It dulls every sound. Even screams feel muffled, like they're coming from underwater. You push your door open and step inside, dragging half the street with you. The air indoors isn't better. It's still filled with dust, but now it's stale and trapped. You grab a rag and soak it in what little water you have left. You press it over your mouth, desperate to feel something other than grit. Your eyes sting. Your chest heaves. The room is too dark for the time of day. Through the narrow window, you can still see the column of ash rising above the city. Black now, not white. Not a gentle plume, but a thick, boiling pillar, clawing its way into the sky like it's trying to escape something worse down below. You try to shout for your neighbour, just to hear another voice, but your throat is too raw. All that comes out is a rasp, followed by another cough. You wonder how long this can go on. Surely it has to stop. Surely the gods will notice. Surely someone, anyone, will come. But deep down, you already know the answer. The only thing coming is more ash. There's a rumble, low and distant. You feel it in your gut before you hear it. The walls shiver. A plate falls and shatters. Somewhere above you, something shifts. Wood groaning under the new weight pressing down on the roof. You realise the ash isn't just falling, it's accumulating. Every flake that lands adds to the pressure. You don't know how much your home can take. You don't want to find out. You try to think clearly. What do people do in disasters? Do you leave? Go to higher ground? But the streets are choked. The exits, if there even are any, are buried in panic. You could stay, wait it out. But wait for what? More ash, the heat, the inevitable collapse of everything? You move around the house, sealing shutters with wet cloth, pushing furniture against the gaps. It feels theatrical, the kind of thing people do to feel useful when nothing can actually be fixed. You pour more wine, then spit it out. It tastes like the air. You sit on the floor, hunched, arms wrapped around your knees like a child. Ash leaks in from beneath the door, a slow, crawling grey tide. You watch it spread across the floor. It feels intimate, like it knows your name. Outside, the coughing is everywhere, not individual now, collective. The city has become one giant, wheezing organism, choking on its own hubris. The proud Pompeii, the bustling, booming, bragging little gem of Roman efficiency, reduced to a sputtering silhouette in a storm of powdered death. You remember hearing someone call this place eternal. You almost laugh, but then the roof creaks again, and you stop laughing, you stop thinking. You just sit there, cloth pressed over your face, breath shallow, watching the ash swirl and gather. First dust, then flakes, now a choking, blinding nightmare. and it's only just begun. You're not sure how long you sat there, in your doorway, hunched and still, watching the ash creep across your floor like it owned the place. Long enough for your legs to go numb. Long enough for the light filtering through the shutters to shift from pale yellow to an eerie, flickering grey. Long enough to convince yourself that maybe this was all it would be. A thick dusting, an ugly day, a story to tell your grandchildren, if your lungs still worked by then. But then the bell rings. Not a pleasant bell, not the kind that calls for prayers or market sales. This one is sharp and frantic, rung without rhythm, just slammed again and again, like the person pulling the rope is trying to punch God in the face. It comes from the forum, which means it's official. Something's wrong enough that even the people in charge have noticed. You get to your feet, swaying a little, cloth still pressed to your mouth, and step back into the ash-choked street. You're not the only one moving now. The quiet has broken. Not with chaos, not yet, but with movement. Urgent, awkward, people carrying bundles, pulling children by the wrist, shouting names into the soot. The air has thickened further, visibility dropping to the length of a torch's glow, and most people aren't carrying one. You follow the general direction of the crowd, trusting instinct over logic, because there's nothing logical left about today. The forum is a mess. Where there were once orderly rows of vendors and self-important men in togas gesturing over taxes and wine shipments, there is now a press of bodies, all coated in grey. Everyone looks like statues come to life, cracked, smudged, stumbling. You can't see the faces clearly, but the sounds say enough. Breathing has become a chore. Every sentence is interrupted by coughing. The priests are yelling louder now, standing on the temple steps, their arms raised in desperate benediction. The words blur together, but the tone is unmistakable. This is your punishment. For sin, for pride, for skipping sacrifices, for eating shellfish on sacred days. Pick your favourite offence. This is retribution, and it's on schedule. No one listens, or maybe they do, but only with the kind of shallow desperation that's less about salvation and more about bargaining. You watch as a woman tosses a handful of coins at the priests and screams something about her son. No one catches the coins. They disappear into the ash like offerings into a bottomless well. Somewhere behind you, a child starts crying, then shouting, then screaming. You turn just in time to see a little shape vanish into the cloud of ash, a blur of motion, then nothing. Someone calls after them. Too late. The ash closes in like fog dipped in cement. You blink and rub your eyes. The flakes sting now. Your lashes are sticky with it. The gods remain silent. So do the officials. A body falls nearby. You don't know if it's alive or dead. You don't stop to check. You step over something soft and vaguely human-shaped on the way to the basilica, where someone said a magistrate was handing out orders. It might have been a person. Might still be. Your foot sinks slightly into it before you step away. There's no reaction. You move on. The screaming starts slowly, isolated, individual, primal. Then it spreads. Like fire through dry reeds. One voice becomes three. Three become dozens. It's not words anymore. Just sound. Fear made audible. You hear someone yell that the sea is boiling. Someone else claims the gods are falling from the sky. A man near the edge of the crowd is curled into a ball, arms over his head, mumbling the same word again and again. You can't tell what it is. You find yourself in motion, but not with purpose. You follow the crowd, and the crowd follows nothing. No one knows where they're going. They just know they can't stay. You pass people carrying bundles of valuables, statues, scrolls, coins, dragging them through ash that already knee-deep in places. One woman clutches a silver candelabra like it will ward off fire. A man is screaming at a slave to carry more wine. No one carries food. The heat has intensified. You don't know where it's coming from, but it feels like it's rising through the ground itself. The soles of your sandals are hot. Not metaphorically, actually hot. You feel each step like it's pressing into a skillet. The sky isn't visible anymore, just a solid wall of greyish-black overhead. There's no wind, no direction to the falling ash. It's just everywhere, all the time. Like gravity has changed its mind about what it wants to do. People begin to break. One man runs headfirst into a wall and collapses. A woman sits down in the middle of the street and starts combing ash from her child's hair, even though the child isn't moving. A group tries to lift a collapsed cart that's blocking the main road, but it's buried now. The wheels sunk, the oxen foaming at the mouth and barely breathing. You try to help lift, but your arms feel like wet rope. You give up before the others do. There are rumours, of course, there always are. The harbour is still open. There are boats. You hear someone shouting that the road to Herculaneum is clear, that people are escaping that way. But others say it's worse over there, that the wind changed, that the fire moved. No one knows what's real. The truth is somewhere under the panic, but good luck finding it when your mouth is full of soot and your eyes burn just from blinking. You feel your chest starting to tighten, not just from fear, though that's a part of it, but from the ash itself. Every breath is a gamble. Every inhale feels heavier. You wonder how long your lungs can keep pulling in this poison before they decide they've had enough. You try breathing slower, shallower, but it only makes the panic worse. You run. Not toward anything. That would imply you've made a decision. You're just running because your legs are doing it, and you haven't had time to tell them to stop. The crowd around you surges forward like a tide with no shoreline, all moving in different directions, but somehow still pressing the same way. You're pushed, shoved, spun around. Every other body is an obstacle. Every alley is a gamble. You think you're going east, but it's hard to tell. The sun is gone, swallowed by the smoke. The streets are a maze even on the best days. Too narrow, too winding, too choked with monuments and self-importance. Now they're worse. Every familiar landmark is buried in ash or obscured by panic. You pass a statue you've walked by 100 times and barely recognize it beneath the grey crust. You try to orient yourself, but your thoughts are as scrambled as the city's layout. Someone yells that the harbour is still open. Another voice insists it's already flooded. You follow a group that looks like they know where they're going, a family maybe, or strangers who made the mistake of grouping up too late. They turn into a side street and you follow, only to stop short when the passage narrows and ends in a heap of rubble. A collapsed wall blocking the way completely. You turn back and nearly collide with someone doing the same thing. Neither of you says a word. The weight of the ash is mounting, literally. It piles quickly, every surface thick with it, the road soft and treacherous underfoot. You slip more than once, your sandals skidding on soot-slick stone. Your lungs burn. The cloth over your mouth is damp with your own breath, which now smells like metal and rot. Your chest tightens with every inhale, and you wonder, not abstractly, but practically, how many more breaths like that you can take. You try another street, blocked, another, fire, another, packed shoulder to shoulder with other people who had the same idea a few moments too late. The crowd swells again and traps you in its flow. You don't move forward so much as you're moved, crushed between others who are coughing, crying, shouting orders at no one who's listening. You hear a child wail once, then not again. The press is unbearable. Elbows dig into your ribs. A fist shoves your back. You stumble, regain your footing, then push forward, because if you fall here, you won't get up. Someone next to you is trying to drag a cart, overloaded with jugs, a bronze bust, what might be jewellery or religious relics. It tips, spills, and blocks the road behind them. The people behind them scream, but no one stops to help. The ones who can squeeze past do. The ones who can't turn and flee the other way. The one with the cart just sits down beside it and cries. Your sense of direction disintegrates. You round corners and double back without realising it. You think you see the same dead goat 3 different times. The buildings seem to shift around you. Doors vanish behind veils of ash. Statues become unrecognizable silhouettes. Nothing feels stable anymore. Not the roads, not the sky, not your own thoughts. You could walk in a circle for hours and never know. You probably are. The heat is unbearable now. It radiates from the ground, not the sky. The stones under your feet pulse with it. Not hot like summer, but hot like a kiln. You feel it through your soles. Your tunic clings to your body, wet with sweat and ash and something else you don't want to think about. Your skin stings. You're not sure if it's from the heat or the chemicals in the ash, or the simple fact that your body wasn't meant to endure this kind of air. You keep moving. There's no path anymore, just instinct. You take whichever turn looks the least deadly, but every route narrows into a crush of bodies or ends in a dead wall. A shop is on fire. Another has collapsed. A temple has caved in completely, its columns shattered like dry bones. You climb over the rubble, scraping your knees, and fall hard on the other side. You don't stand up right away. There's a moment, brief, heavy, when you consider staying down. But then the smoke shifts and you see a shape in the distance. You think it might be the gate. You hope. You run again. Each step is an effort. Your muscles feel wrong, slow and brittle. Your throat tightens. The coughing doesn't stop anymore. It's just one long broken wheeze punctuated by choking fits. You pass people who have stopped, kneeling, sitting, collapsed. Eyes open, mouths slack, already dusted over. You don't say anything to them. They don't say anything to you. You reach another wall, not a dead end, but worse. A crowd bottlenecked in a narrow exit. You try to push through, but there are too many bodies, too many people with the same last chance. You're pressed between strangers, faces grey and hollow, and realise this is it. There's no getting out. There's no plan B. The exit you hoped for is already too full, and it won't matter anyway. Because just then the ground trembles, not a rumble, not a warning, but a violent jolt that knocks people sideways and sends tiles crashing from nearby roofs. You hear the unmistakable crack of something enormous splitting apart. A scream rises, collective and final, as the crowd scatters in every direction at once. You're thrown to your knees. Ash rushes into your mouth. Your hands sink into a pile of it, soft and hot. You try to rise, but your body isn't cooperating anymore. You're exhausted. Your breath is thin. Your legs are shaking. Your vision is blurred. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you finally stop wondering what it feels like to suffocate. Because now you know. You hear it before you see it. A low, splintering crack that cuts through the air, like a slow exhale turned violent. Not a roar, not a crash, just a terrible bending snap, followed by a dull, final thud that sends a puff of soot into the already choking wind. The people closest to it don't scream. There's no time. One moment, they're inside a house, or a shop, or a shrine. The next, they're not. Not in any meaningful sense, just gone beneath a roof that gave up trying to hold out against the weight of the sky. The ash has piled thick and heavy, heavier than anyone expected. You'd never think something so light, something that dances on the wind like snow, could press down like a stone slab when it decides to settle. But it does. It sinks into every crevice, wedges itself into every joint and beam and rafter, soaking up what little moisture's left in the air and turning it into weight. Then it pushes, and when it pushes long enough, things fall. You see the rubble where a roof used to be, broken beams sticking out like snapped ribs, ceramic tiles scattered like teeth. The bodies are half visible if you look hard enough. You don't. You've learnt not to. The shape of a foot, a hand, a bit of fabric pinned under the debris. These are things you train your eyes to ignore if you want to keep moving. And you do. Or at least, you think you do. Because staying still means letting the ash do to you what it just did to them. You wonder who they were. For a moment. A flicker of curiosity. But you don't stop to mourn. Your brain won't let you. It's too focused on keeping you upright. Keeping you breathing. Keeping you out of the next collapse zone. Sentimentality takes up too much oxygen, and oxygen is something you've started budgeting like coin. You try to remember if you had any family still in town, a cousin maybe, a brother. You recall your mother's old courtyard house near the western wall, but it's more like remembering a story someone once told you than your own life. The ash falls heavier now. It's not flakes anymore, it's clumps, coarse, wet in places, dark and hot. It lands with weight, sticks to your arms, collects in folds of your tunic, cakes in your ears. Every breath comes with effort. You've stopped coughing because you've run out of strength to keep doing it. Your lungs are a battlefield of scrapes and fire. You chew the air now. It has texture. It coats your teeth and tongue, makes every swallow gritty. You don't know how much longer your body will tolerate this. You're not sure if it's still tolerating it now. You round a corner and nearly trip over a man kneeling in the street, hands clasped around a wooden beam that has fallen diagonally across what used to be his front door. He's praying maybe, or pleading. You can't tell the difference. His lips move, but no sound comes out, just little gasps and dry clicks. You step around him and keep moving. He doesn't notice you. Above, another structure groans under the weight. You hear the same sequence of sounds. Creak, crack, thud. You flinch, duck your head, instinctively press against a wall and wait. When nothing falls on you, you move again. Your legs are moving on memory now, you don't feel them. They carry you forward because that's what they've always done. You spot someone else trying to pull another free, a woman dragging a limp form by the arms, out from under a sagging roof. She stumbles, slips, gets back up, and drags again. The ash clings to her so thickly, you can't tell what colour her dress was originally. A part of you wants to help, but your arms hang uselessly at your sides. There's nothing left to lift with. And anyway, you're not sure if the person she's dragging is alive. Or if she is, really. You pass her like you pass the others. Somewhere nearby, a domus collapses in on itself. It had been fancy once, tall columns, painted walls, a fountain in the atrium. The kind of place people hosted dinner parties to show off how much better their olives were than yours. Now it's a pile of choking dust and cracking stone. You hear the distinct, fragile ring of amphora breaking, stored wine and oil turned into sludge beneath falling rubble. Someone screams nearby, not from injury but fury. You don't look. You just note the direction and avoid it. The homes that haven't fallen yet are dark inside, their entrances yawning open like mouths ready to swallow whoever's dumb enough to step inside for shelter. A few people do. You see them huddled in doorways, crouched beneath lintels, praying their roofs will hold just a little longer. You think they're fools until you realise you're standing in the open and your knees are shaking. You move under a narrow awning, then quickly back out again when the frame shudders above you. There is no safe place, not anymore. You used to think of buildings as protection. That was before the sky started burying them one by one. Now every door is a tomb waiting to close. Every roof is a coin toss. Every step forward is through terrain that wasn't there an hour ago. You move with your head half lowered, your ears tuned not to voices, not to direction, but to the specific groan of stress before a collapse. It's a new language, and you're learning it too late. The ash on the ground now reaches your calves. It drags at your steps like mud. Your legs are heavy, your back aches, and your fingers are tingling. You try to flex them. Only two respond properly. You can't tell if it's circulation or something worse. You lean against a wall, gently, testing it first, and slide down into a crouch. The surface is hot, the stone beneath your fingers warm and slick. You realise you're crying, but it's hard to tell through the ash already streaking your face. You close your eyes for a moment, just to block out the sky. You open them again when another roof falls, somewhere farther away. This time, no scream follows. You wonder if that's a mercy or just timing. You think of your family again, not with longing or grief, but with a strange mechanical guilt, as if you've forgotten something on a list. You try to picture your brother's face and can't. The image won't come. Only the sound of ash falling, the The smell of heat, the texture of ruin pressing in from all sides. You keep moving, because what else is there to do? At first, you think it's just ash again, more of the same. The usual suffocating grey drifting down from above, like dirty snow. But this time, it's darker, not just in colour, but in everything. The light disappears completely, not dimmed, not filtered, gone, as if the sun gave up and left, as if someone dragged a shroud across the sky and tied it tight at the corners. You can't see your hands in front of your face. The torch someone had lit a few steps away flickers and dies with a hiss, like it realised it was pointless. Time stops being real. There's no day anymore, no hour, no way to guess how long you've been walking or crawling or wheezing. Your body operates by instinct, not memory. You take a breath, you take a step, you hope for a direction. You lose the outlines of buildings, of people, of anything solid. The world is ash and smoke, and the distant sound of other people, realising too late that nothing is working anymore. Then you hear it. It doesn't sound like thunder. It doesn't sound like wind. It sounds like the planet itself just tore open. A low, grating rupture that rolls through your bones and up into your skull. You feel it in your teeth, in your jaw, in the pit of your stomach. It keeps building, not louder exactly, but closer. It doesn't echo. It swallows sound instead of making it. You try to turn, try to run, try to figure out what direction might be away from it, but you can't. There's no away anymore. The heat comes before you see anything. It sweeps in like a tide, like the whole world just exhaled through a furnace. It doesn't warm you, it scorches. It blasts past every defense you didn't have. Your skin feels tight, then it feels wrong. Your breath doesn't work, not because you're out of air, but because the air is now something entirely different. Too hot to swallow, too thick to process. You breathe, and your chest locks up. You cough, and something comes out of you that's wet and smells like metal. You don't realise it's the pyroclastic flow until it's already there. You've heard that word before, maybe. Some educated Roman muttering about the power of mountains and the wrath of the gods. But no one ever told you what it really meant. No one explained that it's not lava, not a river of glowing rock you can outrun or hop over with enough warning. No, this is faster than thought. A boiling avalanche of gas, ash, rock, and death barreling downhill at the speed of a nightmare. It flattens everything. Houses crumble without resistance. Statues explode into dust. Trees are incinerated so fast they don't even get to burn properly. The air is no longer air. It's poison. It's fire. It's rock travelling so fast it turns solid into vapour and back again. The flow doesn't pass by. It consumes. You hear the screams of people who are ahead of you. Then you don't. Either the noise is too loud or there's no one left to make sound. You try to run, you try to think, but your legs are jelly and your mind is useless. Your vision is a kaleidoscope of smoke and pain. You fall, you land hard, you feel something snap, a rib maybe, or your resolve, you can't tell. You try to crawl, your palms blister as they touch the ground. You try to scream, but the inside of your throat is scorched raw. You try to shield your face, the cloth you're still wearing ignites at the edge, curling into ash before you can tear it off. Everything burns, but nothing catches fire. It's too fast for that. Fire would be a kindness. This is worse. You are melting from the inside out. Your blood boils in your veins. Your eyes sting with a pain that isn't sharp but suffocating, like someone is pressing their thumb against your skull from the inside. The only moisture left in your body is the steam trying to escape. You don't have time to die. You're just gone. You don't black out exactly. That would be merciful. Instead, your consciousness remains just a few paces behind your body, registering the sensations long after they've outlived their usefulness. You feel your fingernails lift. You feel your skin tighten, then split. You feel the shape of your bones just before they stop making sense. There's no direction left. No sound beyond the roar, No light, no gods, just pressure, heat, and the dreadful knowledge that even if you'd started running days ago, you would have never made it out. This wasn't survivable. Not for you, not for anyone. The flow rolls through the city like it was always meant to. No hesitation, no mercy. It doesn't matter how rich you were, or how devout. It doesn't matter how fast you ran, or how clever your escape plan. Every road ends in the same fate. The courtyards, the temples, the brothels and bakeries and fountains and forums, all swept under the same wave of annihilation. You are not special. You are not spared. You are simply included. Eventually, your body stops registering. Nerves burn away. Breath disappears. Thoughts dissolve into static. You don't know where you are. You don't know who you were. You are nothing now. Just shape and heat and the moment after. And then, silence. Not the silence of safety. The silence of absence, of aftermath. Pompeii does not vanish. It does not dissolve or decay or fade into the earth like so many other forgotten towns. It is buried, entombed under tons of ash and pumice, sealed in place by the very force that destroyed it. Time doesn't wash it away, it locks it in. The city becomes a capsule, not by design, but by failure, by arrogance, by the illusion that permanence could be built from stone and painted walls. No one comes to rebuild, no one dares. The survivors, if there are any, scatter. They speak of fire and darkness and choking air, but the empire has other concerns. Wars to wage, borders to patrol, taxes to collect. The city becomes a cautionary tale, then a rumour, then a vague spot on the map. Life moves on. Pompeii does not. It sinks beneath its own remains, layer by layer, century by century, and yet it stays, preserved in hubris, in death, in silence. The homes, the temples, the brothels, the bakeries, all still there, still intact, if buried, waiting. A whole world stopped mid-step, mid-meal, mid-sentence. The paint fades more slowly than it should. The walls hold their shape. The streets, when uncovered, are still grooved from cartwheels. You can follow them if you want. People do. When they finally dig it up, carefully, methodically, with brushes and little picks and gloves, they marvel at what they find. The frescoes, vivid as ever, scenes of gods and lovers and creatures with too many limbs, mosaics on floors that once felt the ash of fleeing feet, amphorae still full of dried up oil and spoiled wine, a loaf of bread in a petrified oven, a child's toy beneath a cot. Intimacy turned to evidence. They find the bodies too, of course, not skeletons, not graves, shapes, voids in the hardened ash, human outlines where flesh used to be. Some curled up, some sprawled, some holding each other, some alone. Archaeologists pour plaster into the cavities and the shapes rise again. Arms raised, eyes closed, mouths open, frozen in the act of dying. Preserved not in glory, but in interruption. People visit them now. The streets are roped off for tourists. You can walk through the ruins with a guidebook and a bottle of water. You can peer into homes where the ceilings are gone, but the murals remain. You can stand in a forum where politicians once lied professionally, now quiet but no less theatrical. You can buy postcards. You can take selfies beside the cast of a body that no one remembers by name. They call it beautiful, tragic. They call it history, and they're not wrong. But they never talk about how ordinary it all is. The city wasn't some epic monument to civilization. It was a working town. People lived here, fought, bled, slept, died badly, and then they were forgotten, even as their walls were remembered. You are among them, not as a story, not as a statue, as shape, as absence, as something for schoolchildren to stare at through glass and whisper about. They wonder who you were, but not long enough to find out. You are one of many. A figure in the dirt, a posture. They don't say your name. They can't. It didn't survive. It wasn't written anywhere they cared to look. Maybe it was scratched onto a doorway once, or burned on a tag around your wrist, or whispered once by someone who didn't get out either. Either way, it's gone, replaced with a number, a note, a guess. Pompeii lives on, as a spectacle, as a destination, as a lesson in what not to build next to a volcano. It is cleaned and mapped and reassembled. Professors debate what the art means. Historians admire the plumbing. Tourists complain about the dust. No one mentions the smell. No one describes the sound. They say the city was lost. That's not true. It never left. It just stopped being useful. There's a kind of arrogance in the way it stands now, the way its ruins are praised, the way people admire the preservation without acknowledging the price. The beauty of the tragedy is more popular than the tragedy itself. The murals are more photographed than the casts. The architecture is more studied than the cause of death. The romance of ruin overshadows the horror that made it. They say Pompeii is timeless, but what they really mean is that your suffering has been smoothed into something palatable. Your death, and the deaths of everyone like you, have become part of the decor, an aesthetic, a narrative arc, a teachable moment. The city was buried in its own certainty, in its belief that Rome would always protect it, that the gods would always be watching, that the mountain was just a mountain. It died holding those ideas like talismans, useless and shiny, and far too heavy to carry to safety. And now, centuries later, people walk through what's left, pretending they can imagine what it was like. They can't, but you could. Vesuvius isn't finished. It wasn't finished in 79 CE, and it isn't finished now. It's not a monument. It's not a relic. It's not the tragic backdrop to a cautionary tale. It's a mountain with a hole in it and a history of violence. It doesn't remember the people it buried, and it doesn't need to. It sleeps the way predators do, not out of peace, but out of rhythm. It will erupt again. It always does. The locals know this. They live with it like you did. They point to the mountain and talk about how long it's been, how sophisticated modern monitoring is, how fast evacuation routes are now. Some of them have drills, some of them have plans, some of them have apps on their phones to warn them if the sky starts to look wrong. And most of them assume that if it happens, it'll happen to someone else first. Sound familiar? They live in towns with names you'd still recognize. Ercolano, Torre del Greco, Naples, sprawling and bright, glittering in the distance, like a mirror meant to distract the gods. There are new homes now, new walls, new roads, built right on top of old bones. Apartments sit atop ruins, shops above ash. There are maps that mark danger zones, bright red splotches where whole cities once stood. People live inside those red zones, shrugging at the charts. They say things like, "It's been quiet for so long," as if time is a promise. But time doesn't stop a volcano, it only gives it better aim. You, of course, didn't have any of this. No sensors, no evacuation plans, no alerts on polished rectangles that chirp when the ground stirs. What you had were omens, dreams, animals acting strange, sky colours you didn't understand, ash falling like snow in summer. And still you waited, still you listened to priests, to neighbours, to the part of yourself that believed in normal. You waited until there was nowhere left to go, until the air stopped being air, until your lungs stopped being lungs. The people now think they're smarter than you. Maybe they are. They certainly talk like they are. They have satellites and computers and concrete that doesn't crumble after 3 seasons of rain. But they also have the same impulse you did, to ignore the warning signs until they're undeniable, to mistake silence for safety, to assume that if the world really was ending, someone official would have said so. Modern delusions are slicker, but they're not better. They come with branding and reassurance, emergency kits, backup generators, government websites that load slowly in moments of crisis, and most of all, a comforting lie whispered constantly, that nature will give you enough time to prepare. You know better. You know what it feels like when the mountain stops waiting, when it opens its throat and spits out centuries of pressure in a single endless breath. You know what it's like to run when the streets don't go anywhere, when the sun vanishes at noon, when the air turns to ash and the ash turns to stone. You know that the end doesn't feel like doom. It feels like confusion, like choking, like forgetting what it meant to be alive. They've built rail lines now, roads, helicopter pads. They've named evacuation zones with letters and colours, planned them like puzzles they'll never solve. They've done everything except leave, and they won't. Not until the sky turns black again. Not until the air tastes metallic. Not until the heat rises from the ground and reminds them that the earth doesn't care how clever their architecture is. Vesuvius is quiet for now, but it doesn't need a reason to speak again. It doesn't care about school schedules or tourist seasons or peak traffic hours. It doesn't care how many children live nearby or how many elderly need assistance. It will move when it wants to, and when it does, everything will move with it. Maybe they'll listen this time. Maybe someone will see the signs and believe them. Maybe they'll run before the heat hits. Maybe the roads will hold. Maybe the alerts will go off at the right moment. Maybe it won't be as bad. But you know what maybe really means? It means someone will hesitate. Someone will wait for confirmation. Someone will look up at a sky that's starting to turn the wrong colour and say, "It's probably nothing." Someone will stay too long packing bags that won't matter. Someone will turn back to get a pet, a photo, a pair of shoes. Someone will think there's more time. Someone always does. You did. There's no shame in it, just inevitability. Volcanoes don't hate. They don't punish. They don't take sides. They just act. Without warning, without mercy, without reason. They rise, they split. They bleed fire and choke the sky and reset the clock on everything within reach. And then they go quiet again. Until next time. And there is always a next time. So yes, Vesuvius will erupt again. Not out of anger, not because of sin or prophecy or human error, just because that's what it does. It doesn't need your fear or your faith. It doesn't even need your presence. It's patient. And you are not. There are no statues of you, no inscriptions, no elegies etched in marble, no mosaic that immortalizes your face, or your deeds, or the last moment you stood upright. You were not a hero. You were not remembered. You were not even missed. You died quietly, inconveniently, and entirely as expected. One of hundreds, maybe thousands, whose names vanished before the ash even settled. The city remembers its architecture, its gods, its scandalous graffiti and colourful walls and elaborate bathhouses. It remembers the outlines of power, villas, temples, bakeries, but not the people who scrubbed those walls or swept those floors or stood in line for stale bread. It doesn't remember the poor, the tired, the unlucky, the ones who didn't run fast enough, which means it doesn't remember you. And why would it? You didn't do anything extraordinary. You didn't save a child from the rubble. You didn't carry water to the forum. You didn't leave behind a diary that would one day be translated and analysed and sold in neat leather-bound editions. You lived your life. You tried to keep your debts manageable. You drank bad wine. You made bad choices. You assumed, like everyone else, that tomorrow would arrive as usual, but it didn't. And still, nothing about your end was special. You didn't stand atop a crumbling tower shouting defiance at the gods. You didn't offer yourself as a sacrifice to save someone else. You didn't lock eyes with death and meet it bravely. You suffocated. You collapsed. You became part of the scenery. You died as anonymously as you lived, which is to say, completely within expectations. If you'd survived, by some miracle or absurd twist of fate, nothing would have changed. You wouldn't have become famous. No one would have asked for your story. You would have fled, covered in ash and burns, coughing up blood for days, and eventually settled in some other Roman outpost where you'd have to rebuild your life from scratch. No one would believe what you'd seen. Most wouldn't even ask. But you didn't survive, and you weren't supposed to. That's the point. Disasters don't care about story arcs. They don't choose their victims based on narrative. There is no poetic justice here. No final act. No redemptive gesture. Just an ending. You were a person standing in the wrong place when the sky opened up. You didn't escape because you hesitated. Because you waited. Because the warnings weren't loud enough. Because denial is louder than truth. Or maybe just because it was your turn. It's tempting to imagine you mattered, that your death had weight, that it changed something. But the world moved on. The city fell. The empire crumbled. History kept going without you. Your name faded. Your bones turned to outline. Your outline turned to cast. And even that wasn't really about you. It was about the people who found you. About what they could learn. About what they could sell. You became a reference. A footnote in someone else's research. You were never the main character. You were background. You were texture. You were one of the many. And the many are what history uses to frame the few. Your life filled a line in a census, maybe. Your death filled a gap in the ash. You were born, you lived, you died. And not a single line of the great Roman epic bent itself to make room for you. But that's not failure. That's just reality. Most people aren't heroes. Most people are the audience, not the star. They survive in the margins, or they don't. They do their best. They run when they're told to stay. They stay when they should run. They guess. They gamble. And most of the time, they lose. You did. And what's left of you now, if anything, is quiet. Still. Fixed in a pose you didn't choose. Wearing an expression no one remembers forming. You don't speak, you don't move, you don't tell your story because there's no one left who could hear it in the right language, with the right meaning. You've become part of the past, but not the kind that lives on, the kind that sits buried until someone needs a reminder of what happens when the world stops waiting. Some might say your story is a warning, others might say it's a tragedy, but really, it's just a conclusion. Not to a great tale, just to a day that went worse than most. You died because you were there, because you existed in a place that had convinced itself it was immune to endings. You weren't alone in that belief. The city shared it. The empire too. They thought they had time, thought they had protection, thought that death only came to people less prepared, less favoured, less clever. But death isn't picky. It doesn't ask for credentials. It doesn't care who you are. It didn't care about you. And now, neither does anyone else. That brings us to the end of tonight's slow collapse. Not into fire, but into silence, ash and the kind of forgetting that feels almost polite. If you're still awake, thank you for wandering with me through the soot-choked alleys of a city that thought it had time. If you'd like early access to more long, quiet descents into history's least survivable moments, along with perks like ad-free audio, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about the moment you think you would have realised it was too late. And if you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review is the best way to help others find their way to these episodes. Sleep well.